he made the statement that the Lord was telling him that the darkness would not prevail against the light. That despite what's going on around you, despite how insignificant you may feel, despite the size of your church, despite the wickedness within your community, despite all of that, despite what's going on in the world, the conflicts, the uncertainties, the wars, the rumors of wars, the darkness will not prevail against the light.
So good. Welcome back to the Hacker Podcast.
Yeah, well, this is take 2, trying to record our new studio. We did the audio, which was great for our last episode together, and we set in the audio to check it out on YouTube, and then it didn't end up making it to YouTube, did it?
No, it didn't. There was a lot of technical aspects we overlooked, and so
like frame rate,
lighting.
Well, lighting wasn't too bad, but it was frame rate. It was I think I had spots on the camera, so that was didn't look good. But hey, we might reveal that later.
Yeah.
You know, when we've been doing this for like 5 years, like that.
This lighting is
episode.
better though.
Yeah, it is better.
This lighting is better. It wasn't.
We just got to get rid of the white wall at some stage because I become a chameleon. So.
I'll just. Yeah, we have to wear dark shirts in order to. As of right now,
I don't know if we have to, but I have to. Well, you guys should see the last 10 minutes before we actually started recording this. It was interesting getting started. But I guess we're joking a bit more because we are talking about a more serious subject here today. So I guess sometimes they say if you don't laugh, you'll cry. But we wanted to talk about what's been going on in Israel, in Gaza. We're not going to go into deep detail on that, and this isn't the place that you go to hear that discussion. But we're just talking about it in broad terms. And so it was, I don't know about you, Stefan, but it was horrific seeing what was going on.
I think we try to stay away from current events in the world, right?
Yeah.
However, this probably has a spiritual undertone that we felt like we maybe need to address, or we maybe need to just discuss from our lives and what we see here in Australia. Yeah,
I completely agree. And the attack itself that took place, that initiated everything that's going on right now with the violence and the bombings and whatnot. But the initial attack was just unbelievable. Like, I think growing up in the society that we've grown up in, you've seen horrific school shootings, and that's always horrible. But just the scale of this attack, the nature of it, the people that were targeted, unfortunately I've seen some of the images, and I think it was impossible to escape them all.
And I think when you first heard about it, you were numb to things that are happening over there. So without actually getting the details, you were just thinking, it's just,
another attack,
another Saturday, right? And then you look at what's going on, and it's just really sad.
Well, just the savagery of it. I thought, I don't know why I thought that. I guess I was naive, but it felt like us as a society, we'd moved on from those sorts of things. But man, it was very heavy. And then I don't know about you, but for me, what's been even more jolting, I don't know if we can use the word more, because that seems, I don't know, it seems like you're lessening the actual attack, which was horrible. But for me, what has been really confronting is the rallies and the obfuscation, the arguing that sort of behavior was okay, what they did, they're just fighting and they're just freedom fighters. And you're seeing these rallies, and we live in Sydney, so many of you would have seen some of the images of rallies that were taking place. We made global news, which is fantastic, but not for the right reasons. And it was quite embarrassing, actually, as a Sydney-sider, to see that, and seeing the name of our beautiful town connected to images like that of people chanting things. I'm not sure exactly what they were chanting, but it wasn't good, and it was very anti-Semitic. And it wasn't just there; it was in other parts of Sydney that there were rallies going on, and you just didn't expect that. Didn't expect that.
It makes you ask the question: why would you chant these? Like, why would you chant for these acts?
Yeah. Like I understand the conflict.
Yeah, and
right?
the conflict's different.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important to separate the conflict that's going on versus
Yeah.
that event.
Yeah, but those rallies were happening prior to retaliation, which was wild to me. Like if they're doing it now, or maybe next week after a week or two of this war, because Israel's actually declared war on Palestine or Hamas, I think is what they've said. If they're doing that a week later, 2 weeks after that's happening, and you're seeing images of cities destroyed and civilians, I can totally understand that. But there's protests going on within 24 hours of the images coming out, and then when they did it, it wasn't just like any normal day, but they did it on a Jewish holiday. They did it during the Sabbath, so then practicing or observant Jews, Orthodox Jews, weren't even able to access the internet.
Yeah.
Like a guy like Ben Shapiro, he wasn't even able to comment about it for 2 days because he was observing a holy day. And
and you see a lot of like people saying, how people are actually getting attacked for just saying that that attack was bad.
Yeah.
People are being like, they're getting condemned for saying,
it's wild.
How
it's really
could
wild.
you go for like that? That's not the point, right? The people that were in those kibbutz and people that are, living those lives, they're not the government.
Yeah.
They're just innocent people.
They're civilians,
They're civilians. They're kids.
There was pensioners, like women, old women.
Yeah, and so it was shocking to celebrate something so gruesome.
Yeah, and I think it was just like a reminder, a very forceful reminder that in a kind of the topic of our conversation here, and it's not gonna be a long one here today. We didn't want to take too much time, and we're not trying to keep it heavy, but it is sort of a reminder that there really is darkness in this world. And I've always heard that when people are confronted with real evil, like true evil, it's really hard to deny the existence of something beyond humanity.
Yeah. What would you say for those watching it that, my first reaction was anger?
Yeah.
Like what would you say for someone who is watching that and they see the reports and they're also, their first reaction is anger? Is that an appropriate response? Is that something that you would, what would you do in that case?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'm some sort of moral guide here. Like I don't know what my emotions were. I was more so sadness. I just really saddened. I was pretty upset with our fellow Sydney-siders. I didn't enjoy seeing that. Anger, I don't think, the Bible talks about righteous anger. I'm not sure if anger is the right response. What Brother Woodward, we're recording this before the Brother Woodward episode is out, but what he said in that conversation, I asked him, not necessarily about the conflict, but about its implications on the end times. And he said something poignant. He said, we have to remember that on both sides of the conflict are souls.
Yeah.
And the pastor said something similar on Sunday as well.
So important.
And I think we can't be so drug into support for Israel that we forget about souls. The real souls, the real people. You might disagree with them, you may think they're wrong, but I remember, and I'm probably going to put a reel out in another week or so from Vonnie Marshall when she was talking about if you're not praying for your enemies, you're not a follower of Christ.
Yeah.
And it's you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
You don't want to have to do that, but that's a standard that Christ set for us. He said, pray for your enemies, do good to those who despitefully use you, turn the other cheek. Now, should Israel completely turn the other cheek? And no, I mean, we're not talking about governance. We're talking about it as an individual. So, I would say, we just have to remember the humanity on both sides. I think there is a right side and a wrong side, but as far as on either side, if you're talking about a war, just like people would say there's a right side and a wrong side to Russia and Ukraine. But that's a political statement, or that's a viewpoint. I'm not willing to get into that. But
I've heard something where, and it's I believe this is true. The biggest losers in war are the innocent civilians.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, in this particular case, it's so true.
Yeah.
And we're going to continue to get reports as this escalates,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we shouldn't, like you said, we shouldn't be so one-sided.
Yeah.
When it comes to praying. It should be for the whole conflict.
Pray for both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And
that's a good point.
Yeah, I think that ultimately, your initial reaction is your initial reaction, and then going forward, you should probably,
Well, we have a bias towards Israel because it's God's chosen people.
Yeah.
And we live our life based on Scripture that they're some of the main characters, and so we have a bias towards them. But I think the reason to talk about this, and I want to transition it into more positive. So all this has been going on in the background. I've been looking at reports and different things that are going on, listening to podcasts. And then I've been listening back to Brother Morgan at Turning Point. He was the theme, a nugget that he gave us was the theme of our conversation a couple weeks ago. And it's going to be, again, for this one, because he made this statement. It was at the very beginning. It was in the same sermon that you referenced about the altar and the throne. But he made this statement at the beginning. He was talking about this vision that he had seen. And he said it was 30 plus years ago. He shares it everywhere he goes. And about this fire ball coming from heaven and split off. And one of it hit the altar at the church that he was at. And when it impacted the altar, out of it came these angels with swords drawn. And they were like, angels of light. Or not angels of light, but they're angels. And he made the statement that the Lord was telling him that the darkness would not prevail against the light. That despite what's going on around you, despite how insignificant you may feel, despite the size of your church, despite the wickedness within your community, despite all of that, despite what's going on in the world, the conflicts, the uncertainties, the wars, the rumors of wars, the darkness will not prevail against the light.
So good.
And, our God is the light, but not only is he the light, we have been called to be children of the light as well.
Yeah.
The Bible says that we are a city that's set on a hill. We're a light that cannot be hidden. And we're supposed to walk as children of the light. And so we can't allow the darkness to pervade us to the point where we're walking in fear, where we're anxious about what's going to happen next, where we allow the news of the day, the news cycle of the day to overwhelm. I know a few days ago, my wife made the comment, like, you're a bit on edge, like, why are you, I was answering the girls, like, I was a bit, and I had to check myself. I was like, man, I've been watching too many of these.
Yeah.
I've been looking at too many of these reports, and it's killing me.
Yeah.
And then it was affecting my day, and then it was affecting my relationships.
And looking at those reports, the reason why we look at those reports is because we feel like watching it, we have some sort of it can be some, like, in some sort of way we can fix a solution if we just, like, know more, right? And and that's a wrong perspective, right? If we're proceeding forward and then in our everyday lives, understanding that what you mentioned, that the darkness will not prevail, we're sort of allowing God to provide the light.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I think it's important to be informed, but you can be informed to the point where it's like overwhelming you, you know.
it's
And
changing your emotions and
exactly,
more, if anything,
and
that
happened.
it's doing more harm than good in terms of understanding what's going on in the world, right?
Yeah.
If you're reading the same news 5 times and the same information's coming out, is that
If you
really
follow
helpful?
multiple people, like if you're, and it's true. I was thinking about it. You know, in the age of Twitter, or X as it's called now, it's, you know, following a football game and following a armed conflict is similar.
Yeah.
Like, you're getting updates, you're seeing different things. You know, I think for me, yeah, it was almost like this cycle. I was like seeing the reports, seeing how terrible it was, and then seeing the protests and all of that. But at some point, it's like you got to step away from that and understand, okay, let me reset, let me refocus. Yes, I'm going to pray. Yes, but what can you do beyond that? Well, you can't really do much beyond that in regards to that conflict. But you can make a difference in your community.
Yep.
You can show love to other people. You can, be that person that treats your Muslim neighbor the exact same way that you did before.
Yeah, I think.
And that sometimes that can be a challenge for people. But in the society that we live in here in Sydney, I mean, you have no other choice. Like,
yeah, it definitely was. And someone who, I was pretty young when 9/11 happened, so I didn't really understand the, what maybe from, I wouldn't understand it if I was the same age now, but from what I remember and what, history tells us, is it wasn't something that divided people as much as this conflict did. And we, I
that's
think
true.
I think, even though looking back, we're seeing the for me, I'm seeing the difference of that conflict versus this conflict, or this event versus that event. I think ultimately your prescription of treating someone the same as you would want to be treated, being a good Christian to whoever that is just stands true.
Yeah.
And it makes a difference.
And that's the only way we're going to be a light, is if we're different.
Right.
If we allow the Spirit of God, the love of God, to work in us and through us to impact those who are around us. So, again, this is always going to be a shorter episode, and we didn't want to keep it dark, but we did want to make a comment about what was going on, as well as just encourage you all that in times like this, recenter, refocus, remind yourself of the God that you have in your life, that He is light, in Him is no darkness at all, and that you are a light bearer, you are a child of the light. And so we're meant to shine. We're not meant to be like everybody else. We're not meant to be drawn away by these conflicts and picking sides and cheering and so on and so forth. Yes, we should pray for those who were affected. Yes, we should pray for peace in Jerusalem. Pray for Jerusalem. Pray for the people who lost loved ones, the people who have family members that are still hostages, and all of that. Pray for that situation. Pray that there would be a conclusion to what's going on. But beyond all that, show the love of God in our day-to-day lives, and be that light. The darkness will not prevail. It's not going to prevail ultimately. The light is going to overcome the darkness. And that's true in your life, and that's true in this world. The light will always shine.